Welcome to Sion, where the greatest minds in history share their wisdom in gentle whispers designed to ease you into rest. Tonight we embark on a journey through the vast cathedral of thought built by one of history's most profound thinkers, Thomas Aquinas, the 13th century scholar whose ideas shaped not only philosophy and theology, but the very foundations of how we understand reality, knowledge, and our place in the cosmos. Before we begin, I would love to know where in the world you're listening from tonight. There is something deeply comforting about imagining these timeless ideas drifting across continents, settling into minds, preparing for sleep. If you find peace in these explorations of wisdom, please consider subscribing to join our quiet community of nighttime philosophers. Your presence here helps these gentle conversations reach others who seek understanding in the stillness of evening. I do hope Thomas's measured reasoning will guide you toward rest, though I must warn you, his logic has a way of being unexpectedly captivating. Should you find yourself wide awake at the end, at least you will drift off with some of the most elegant arguments in human thought resting softly in your mind. So settle in, let your breathing slow, and allow the steady rhythm of scholastic wisdom to carry you gently forward. After all, what could be more soothing than discovering how one brilliant mind sought to weave together reason and faith, philosophy and theology into a seamless tapestry of understanding? Thomas Aquinas stands as perhaps the most systematic thinker who ever lived. Born around 1225 in the Kingdom of Sicily, he would grow to become the architect of a philosophical cathedral so vast and intricate that scholars still walk its halls today, discovering new chambers of insight. His life's work was nothing less than ambitious. He sought to reconcile the wisdom of ancient Greek philosophy, particularly that of Aristotle, with the truths of Christian faith. In doing so, he created a synthesis that would dominate Western thought for centuries. Tonight's journey will unfold like the careful construction of a medieval cathedral, stone by stone, arch by arch, until we can step back and marvel at the complete structure. We will explore how Thomas understood the nature of existence itself, how he believed we could know truth, and how he saw the relationship between human reason and divine revelation. Along the way, we will discover his famous proofs for the existence of God, his understanding of human nature, and his vision of how we should live our lives. But this is not merely an academic exercise. Thomas was a practical philosopher deeply concerned with how we should live, how we should treat one another, and how we can find meaning and purpose in our brief time on earth. His insights remain as relevant today as they were 8 centuries ago, offering gentle guidance for modern souls seeking wisdom in an often chaotic world. The foundation of Thomas's entire philosophical system rests upon a deceptively simple yet profound insight about the nature of existence. He distinguished between what he called essence and existence, two concepts that might seem abstract at first, but which unlock the deepest mysteries of reality when properly understood. Imagine, if you will, holding the idea of a perfect circle in your mind. You can define it precisely. A circle is a closed curve where every point is equidistant from the center. This definition captures the essence of what it means to be a circle. It tells us what a circle is, what makes it different from a square or a triangle. But notice something remarkable. You can understand the essence of a circle perfectly without there being any actual circles existing in the world. The essence, the whatness of a circle, is distinct from its existence, whether it actually is. This distinction, Thomas argued, applies to everything in the created universe. Every being we encounter, from the smallest grain of sand to the most complex human person, has both an essence and an existence. The essence tells us what kind of thing it is. The existence tells us that it actually is, rather than merely being a possibility in someone's mind. But here is where Thomas's insight becomes truly revolutionary. In created beings, essence and existence are distinct. They are joined together, but they could in principle be separated. This is why things come into being and pass away. This is why there is change, growth, decay, and death in the world. A thing's essence does not guarantee its existence. Consider a rose in your garden. Its essence includes being a flowering plant, having thorns, producing a particular fragrance, and growing in certain conditions. But the rose's essence does not require that any particular rose must exist. Roses come into being when the right conditions are met, and they pass away when those conditions change. The essence remains constant even as individual roses live and die. This insight led Thomas to a profound conclusion about the nature of God. If in all created things essence and existence are distinct, then there must be some being in which essence and existence are identical. There must be some being whose very essence is to exist, who cannot not exist, who is existence itself. This being, Thomas argued, is what we call God. This is not merely a logical exercise, but a glimpse into the deepest structure of reality. It suggests that existence itself is not something we should take for granted. The fact that there is something rather than nothing is not a brute fact, but points toward a source of existence that is existence itself. As you rest tonight, consider this gentle mystery, your own existence, the existence of the air you breathe, the bed beneath you, the very thoughts passing through your mind. All of these participate in the mystery of existence. They exist, but they need not have existed. Their essence does not guarantee their existence. Yet here they are, and here you are, sharing in the fundamental gift of being. Thomas's understanding of knowledge flows naturally from his insights about existence and essence. He believed that human beings are wonderfully equipped to understand the world around them. But he also recognized the limits of human knowledge and the need for different kinds of truth to guide our lives. At the heart of Thomas's theory of knowledge lies a beautiful confidence in the human mind's ability to grasp reality. Unlike some philosophers who doubted whether we could truly know anything about the world beyond our own thoughts, Thomas believed that our minds are naturally oriented toward truth. We are made to know, and the world is made to be known. This confidence stems from his understanding of human nature. Thomas saw human beings as rational animals, creatures who share with other animals the ability to sense the world through sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell, but who uniquely possess the power of reason. Through reason, we can abstract universal concepts from particular experiences and grasp the essences of things. When you see a particular dog, for instance, your senses provide you with information about this specific animal, its color, size, the sound of its bark, the texture of its fur. But your intellect does something remarkable. It grasps the universal concept of dog, understanding what makes this particular creature an instance of dogness. You recognize that despite vast differences in size, color, and temperament, a Great Dane and a Chihuahua share something essential that makes them both dogs. This process, Thomas explained, begins with sensation, but culminates in understanding. The mind receives impressions through the senses, but then actively works to understand what these impressions reveal about the nature of things. We do not passively receive knowledge like empty vessels being filled. Instead, we actively participate in the process of understanding, drawing universal truths from particular experiences. But Thomas was careful to acknowledge the limits of human reason. While our minds can grasp many truths about the natural world, there are some truths that exceed the capacity of human reason alone. These are not truths that contradict reason, but truths that lie beyond what reason by itself can discover. Consider the mystery of divine love. Reason can demonstrate that God exists and can understand something about God's nature through examining creation. But reason alone cannot discover that God chose to become human out of love for humanity, or that God offers forgiveness and eternal life to those who turn to him. These truths, Thomas argued, require revelation. They must be communicated by God himself. This led Thomas to distinguish between two kinds of truth. Natural truths are those that human reason can discover by examining the world around us. Revealed truths are those that God has chosen to communicate directly through scripture and tradition. Importantly, Thomas believed these two kinds of truth never truly conflict, since they both come from the same source. God is the author of both the natural world that reason studies and the revelation that faith receives. This understanding of knowledge suggests a gentle humility about what we can and cannot know through our own efforts, combined with gratitude for the additional light that revelation provides. As you settle into sleep tonight, you might reflect on the remarkable fact that your mind can grasp universal truths from particular experiences. The concepts you form, the connections you make, the understanding you achieve, all of these represent a profound harmony between your nature as a rational being and the rational structure of reality itself. Perhaps the most famous aspect of Thomas's philosophy is his systematic attempt to demonstrate God's existence through rational argument. These demonstrations, known as the Five Ways, represent one of the most influential attempts in human history to show that belief in God is not merely a matter of faith, but can be supported by careful reasoning. Thomas approached this task with characteristic methodical precision. He did not attempt to prove everything about God at once, but focused on the more modest goal of showing that there must be some supreme being that explains the existence and order of the universe. The fuller understanding of God's nature, he believed, would require both continued philosophical reflection and the additional light of divine revelation. The first way begins with a simple observation about the world around us. Things change. The seasons cycle from spring to summer to autumn to winter. Living beings grow from infancy to maturity to old age. Water transforms from liquid to vapor to ice. Everywhere we look, we see things moving from potentiality to actuality, from what they might become to what they actually are. But Thomas noticed something crucial about this process of change. Nothing can actualize its own potential. A cold piece of metal cannot make itself hot. It requires something else, something already hot, to actualize its potential for heat. A seed cannot by itself grow into a tree. It needs soil, water, sunlight, and countless other factors to actualize its potential for growth. This leads to a profound insight. Every change requires something already actual to bring about the actualization of potential, but this creates a puzzle. If everything that changes is changed by another, then we seem to face an infinite chain of changes, each being stretched back without end. Thomas argued that such an infinite regress is impossible, not because infinite series cannot exist, but because in this particular case, if there were no first source of change, there would be no change at all. It would be like trying to move a chain with infinite links but no one pulling it. The chain would never move, no matter how many links it contained. Therefore, Thomas concluded, there must be some first source of change that is itself unchanging, some pure actuality that can actualize the potential in other things without itself being changed. This unchanged changer, this source of all motion and change in the universe, is what everyone understands to be God. As you rest tonight, consider the gentle movements around you, the rise and fall of your chest as you breathe, the beating of your heart, the circulation of blood through your veins, even the slow thoughts drifting through your mind as sleep approaches. According to Thomas, each of these changes points back through an intricate web of causation to a source of change that is itself perfectly stable, perfectly at rest, perfectly actual. In the very changes that carry you towards sleep, you participate in a cosmic movement that finds its ultimate source in divine changelessness. The second way follows a similar pattern, but focuses on efficient causation rather than change. Every effect has a cause, and that cause itself is the effect of some prior cause. Your thoughts are caused by neural activity, which is caused by chemical processes, which are caused by molecular interactions, and so on. But again, an infinite regress of causes seems impossible if we are to explain why anything happens at all. There must be, Thomas reasoned, some first efficient cause that begins the great chain of causation without itself being caused by anything else. This uncaused cause is what we call God. The third way perhaps cuts deepest into the mystery of existence itself. Thomas observed that everything in our experience is contingent. It exists, but it might not have existed. It came into being at some point and will pass away at some point. Even things that seem permanent, like mountains or stars, are ultimately temporary when viewed from the perspective of cosmic time. But if everything that exists is contingent, if everything might not have existed, then it seems possible that at some point nothing existed at all. And if nothing existed at one time, then nothing could exist now, since nothing comes from nothing. Yet here we are. things do exist. Therefore, Thomas concluded, there must be some necessary being, some being that exists not contingently but necessarily, not temporarily but eternally. This necessary being upon which all contingent beings depend for their existence is God. The fourth and fifth ways approach the question from different angles, examining the degrees of perfection we observe in things and the evident design and purpose we see throughout the natural world. But all five arguments share the same basic structure. They begin with features of the world that anyone can observe, show that these features require explanation, and conclude that the best explanation points toward a supreme being that transcends the ordinary limitations of created things. These arguments have been debated for centuries, refined by some philosophers and criticized by others. But regardless of whether you find them completely convincing, they represent something beautiful. They show a mind deeply committed to both reason and faith, seeking to build bridges between human understanding and divine mystery. Tonight, as you prepare for rest, you might reflect on the sheer improbability of your own existence, the countless contingent factors that had to align for you to be here, listening to these words, the vast web of causes and changes that brought you to this moment. According to Thomas, all of this complexity and contingency points beyond itself to a source of existence that is simple, necessary, and eternal. In recognizing your own contingent existence, you touch the edge of a mystery that reason can approach but never fully grasp. What do you think about these five paths to understanding the divine? Do they resonate with your own search for meaning? I would love to hear your reflections in the comments below. Thomas's understanding of the human person reveals one of the most elegant and hopeful visions in all of philosophy. Rather than seeing human beings as merely complex animals or as souls trapped in material bodies, Thomas offered a view that honors both our spiritual and physical dimensions while showing how they form a unified whole. The heart of this vision lies in Thomas's insight that human beings are composed of both soul and body, but not in the way we might initially imagine. The soul is not like a ghost inhabiting a machine, nor is it simply another word for the brain or nervous system. Instead, Thomas understood the soul as the form of the body, the organizing principle that makes a physical organism a living, sensing, thinking being. Consider how a sculptor takes raw marble and shapes it into a beautiful statue. The marble provides the material, but the form imposed by the sculptor transforms mere stone into art. Similarly, Thomas argued the human soul is what gives form and life to the matter of the human body. Without the soul, the body would be merely a collection of chemicals. Without the body, the soul would lack the means to interact with the physical world. This understanding suggests something profound about human nature. We are not accidents of evolution, nor are we purely spiritual beings temporarily imprisoned in flesh. We are embodied souls, creatures designed for both material and spiritual existence. Our bodies are not obstacles to our true selves, but integral parts of who we are. This has beautiful implications for how we should understand our daily experience. When you taste food, it is not merely your body having a sensory experience while your soul remains aloof. Your entire person, body and soul united, participates in the act of tasting. When you think about mathematics or poetry, it is not only your soul that thinks while your body stands idle. Your whole being, including your brain and nervous system, participates in the act of understanding. Thomas's view also suggests why human beings seem to exist at the intersection of two worlds. We share with plants the ability to grow and maintain ourselves. We share with animals the ability to sense our environment and respond to it. But uniquely among material creatures, we also possess intellect and will. We can grasp universal truths, make moral choices, and orient ourselves toward goods that transcend immediate physical needs. This capacity for transcendence, Thomas believed, points towards something remarkable about human destiny. Unlike plants and animals, which achieve their fulfillment within the bounds of their earthly existence, human beings seem oriented toward a fulfillment that exceeds what any finite temporal existence can provide. Our minds can conceive of perfect truth, perfect beauty, perfect goodness, even though we never encounter these perfections fully realized in our earthly experience. The intellect, Thomas observed, is in principle capable of knowing all truth. Not that any individual human can actually achieve such comprehensive knowledge, but that there is something about the nature of the mind itself that is oriented toward unlimited truth. Similarly, the will is oriented toward unlimited good. We can always ask whether there might be something better than whatever good we currently possess. This suggests that human beings are naturally oriented toward God, even when they do not explicitly recognize this orientation. The restlessness of the human heart, our perpetual searching for something more, our dissatisfaction with finite goods, all of these point toward our ultimate destiny in union with infinite truth and goodness. As you settle into rest tonight, consider the remarkable unity of your own being, the thoughts drifting through your mind, the sensations of comfort as you settle into your bed, the gentle rhythm of your breathing. All of these are expressions of a single integrated person. You are not a soul using a body or a body producing a soul, but a unified being in which material and spiritual aspects work together in profound harmony. I want to pause here for just a moment to express my deepest gratitude to you for staying with us through this journey into the mind of Thomas Aquinas. Your presence here, your willingness to engage with these timeless ideas in the quiet of evening, means more than you know. We have explored the foundations of existence, walked through the 5 ways to divine truth, and discovered the beautiful unity of human nature. But I promise you, the best is yet to come. In the chapters ahead, we will discover how Thomas understood the moral life, the cultivation of virtue, and the eternal destiny that awaits every human soul. So please, stay with us. Let your breathing remain slow and steady, and allow these gentle ideas to continue their work of easing you toward peaceful rest. Thomas's understanding of the human person naturally led him to deep reflection on how we should live our lives. His moral philosophy, often called virtue ethics, focuses not primarily on rules or consequences, but on the kinds of persons we should become. The central question is not simply, what should I do, but what kind of person should I be? At the foundation of Thomas's ethics lies the concept of the natural law. This is not a set of arbitrary commands imposed from outside, but rather the way rational creatures participate in God's eternal plan for creation. Just as physical things have natural tendencies that guide their behavior, rational beings have natural inclinations that point toward their proper fulfillment. Human beings, Thomas observed, naturally seek to preserve their existence, to live in community with others, and to know truth, including truth about God. These basic inclinations are not mere biological drives, but rational orientations that point toward genuine human flourishing. The natural law consists in the rational recognition and proper ordering of these natural inclinations. But Thomas was careful to distinguish between what comes naturally to us in our current condition and what is truly natural to human beings as such. We may naturally tend towards selfishness, anger, or despair. These tendencies result from the disorder introduced by sin and circumstance rather than from our deepest nature as rational beings created for relationship with God and neighbour. The goal of moral development, therefore, is to align our actual behaviour with our deepest nature as rational, social, spiritual beings. This happens through the cultivation of virtue, settled dispositions that enable us to act consistently in accordance with right reason and genuine love. Thomas identified 4 cardinal virtues that serve as hinges upon which all moral excellence depends. Prudence is the virtue of practical wisdom, the ability to discern what should be done in particular circumstances. Justice involves giving each person what is owed to them, respecting their dignity and rights. Fortitude enables us to persevere in doing good even when it is difficult or dangerous. Temperance helps us enjoy good things in appropriate measure without being enslaved by our appetites. These natural virtues, Thomas believed, can be cultivated through human effort, though they are perfected and elevated through divine grace. Alongside them, he recognized 3 theological virtues that are pure gifts of God's grace: Faith enables us to assent to truths revealed by God. Hope orients us toward our ultimate fulfillment in divine union. Charity, the greatest of the virtues, enables us to love God for his own sake and to love our neighbours as ourselves. The cultivation of virtue is not a grim duty, but a joyful participation in our own authentic development. As we grow in virtue, we become more fully ourselves, more capable of the kind of relationships and activities that bring deep satisfaction. The virtuous person is not constrained by morality, but liberated by it, free to pursue genuine goods without being deflected by counterfeits. Consider how this applies to your own daily choices. When you show patience with a difficult person, you're not merely following a rule, but developing the kind of character that can maintain loving relationships even under stress. When you persevere in work that serves others, even when you do not feel like it, you are strengthening the fortitude that enables you to contribute meaningfully to the common good. When you enjoy food, friendship, or beauty without excess, you're practicing the temperance that allows you to receive these gifts as they are meant to be received. Thomas's vision of the moral life is ultimately hopeful because it recognizes that we are made for goodness, truth, and beauty. Our moral struggles are not signs that we are fundamentally flawed, but evidence that we are oriented towards something higher than our current condition. Every act of virtue, however small, participates in the great movement of creation toward its ultimate fulfillment in God. As you prepare for sleep, you might reflect gently on the choices you made today, not with harsh judgments, but with the kind of loving attention Thomas would encourage. Where did you act in ways that expressed your deepest nature as a rational spiritual being? Where did you fall short of that ideal? Both the successes and the failures can become occasions for growth in self-knowledge and virtue. The gentle rhythm of moral development continues even as you rest. In sleep, the day's experiences settle into memory. Patterns of choice become more deeply ingrained, and your character continues its slow formation. Thomas would remind us that this formation happens not solely through our efforts, but through the mysterious cooperation of human freedom and divine grace working together to shape us into the persons we are called to become. Thomas's exploration of love and friendship reveals perhaps the most beautiful aspects of his practical wisdom. He saw friendship as one of the highest forms of human relationship, involving mutual affection, shared activity in pursuit of good, and genuine concern for the friend's welfare. True friendship requires virtue in both parties, since only virtuous people can consistently will genuine good for others. But Thomas distinguished between different kinds of friendship based on their objects. Friendships based primarily on pleasure or utility, while legitimate, remain relatively shallow and unstable. The deepest friendships are those based on a shared commitment to virtue and truth, relationships in which friends help each other become better people through mutual encouragement and gentle correction. The highest form of friendship, Thomas believed, is the friendship offered to human beings by God himself. This divine friendship transforms human relationships by enabling people to love others not merely for natural reasons, but as participants in the life of God. Such love can extend even to enemies and can persist even when natural affection is strained or absent. Thomas's understanding of prayer and contemplation flows naturally from his vision of human nature as oriented toward divine truth and love. Prayer, in his view, is not primarily about requesting specific favors from God, though such petitions have their proper place. Rather, prayer represents the natural movement of rational creatures toward their ultimate source and final destination. The foundation of authentic prayer lies in recognizing our fundamental dependence upon God for existence, knowledge, and moral guidance. This recognition is not a burden, but a liberation, freeing us from the impossible task of being our own ultimate ground, and opening us to receive the gifts that flow from divine generosity. Prayer begins in acknowledgement of our creatureliness and flowers into grateful receptivity to divine love. Thomas distinguished between different forms of prayer corresponding to different aspects of our relationship with God. There is the prayer of petition, in which we ask for what we need, recognizing that all genuine goods come ultimately from divine providence. There is the prayer of thanksgiving, in which we acknowledge the gifts already received and express gratitude for the countless ways divine love sustains our existence. There is the prayer of praise, in which we celebrate divine goodness for its own sake rather than for any benefit it brings to us. But perhaps most significant in Thomas's understanding is the prayer of contemplation, the simple resting of mind and heart in the presence of divine mystery. This form of prayer requires no special techniques or extraordinary experiences, though it may sometimes be accompanied by deep peace or spiritual consolation. It consists simply in turning our attention toward God with love, allowing our usual preoccupations to settle into stillness. Such contemplative prayer, Thomas believed, offers a foretaste of the direct vision of God that constitutes ultimate human fulfillment. Even in our present condition, when we cannot see God face to face, we can experience moments of peaceful awareness that hint at the deeper union awaiting us. These moments may come during formal prayer, but they may equally arise during quiet walks, reflective reading, or simple attentiveness to beauty in the natural world. As you prepare for sleep tonight, you might experiment with the kind of simple contemplative attention Thomas described. Without straining after extraordinary experiences, simply rest your awareness gently on the mystery of divine presence that sustains your existence. Allow the day's concerns to settle naturally without forcing them away. If your mind wanders, gently return attention to the quiet sense of being held within infinite love. The gradual transition from waking consciousness to sleep itself mirrors something of the contemplative movement Thomas valued. As rational control relaxes and deeper rhythms take over, we practice a kind of letting go that resembles the receptive stance essential to authentic prayer. In learning to rest trustfully in sleep, we develop capacities that serve us well in learning to rest trustfully in divine mystery. Thomas's approach to suffering represents perhaps the most personally challenging aspect of his philosophy, touching questions that arise inevitably in any honest examination of human existence. Why do good people experience pain? How can a loving God permit evil? What meaning can be found in experiences that seem to serve no constructive purpose? Thomas began with the observation that suffering is indeed a genuine evil, not something to be explained away or minimized. Pain, loss, disappointment, and death are real privations of good, genuine obstacles to human flourishing. Any adequate response to suffering must acknowledge its reality, rather than dismissing it as illusion or disguising it as hidden blessing. But Thomas distinguished between different kinds of evil and different possible responses to each. Some suffering results from the natural limitations of finite existence. We grow old, we become ill, we face the deaths of those we love simply because we are creatures rather than the Creator. Such suffering is not punishment for wrongdoing, but the inevitable accompaniment of embodied existence in a world governed by natural laws. Other suffering results from moral evil, the deliberate choices of rational beings to act against their own deepest nature and the good of others. Such suffering can often be prevented through better choices, more just social arrangements, and the cultivation of virtue. While we cannot eliminate moral evil entirely in this life, we can work to reduce its effects and to respond to it in ways that promote healing rather than perpetuating cycles of harm. The most difficult cases involve suffering that seems to serve no constructive purpose, that cannot be prevented through human effort, and that falls upon people who have done nothing to deserve it. Here, Thomas acknowledged the limits of human understanding, while maintaining confidence that divine providence somehow encompasses even apparently meaningless suffering within a larger plan that exceeds finite comprehension. This does not mean that suffering is always good, or that we should be passive in the face of preventable pain. Thomas strongly supported efforts to relieve suffering where possible and to create conditions that promote human flourishing. But he also recognized that some suffering cannot be avoided and must be endured with as much grace and courage as we can manage. The key insight Thomas offered is that suffering need not destroy the meaning of human existence if it is integrated into a larger vision that extends beyond earthly life. If our ultimate destiny lies in direct union with divine love, then present sufferings, however severe, cannot ultimately defeat the purposes for which we were created. This perspective does not make suffering less painful, but it can prevent suffering from becoming the final word about human existence. As you rest tonight, you carry with you whatever sufferings have marked your own journey. Thomas would encourage you neither to minimize their reality nor to allow them to eclipse your awareness of the goods that also characterize your existence. In the gentle darkness that surrounds sleep, both pain and comfort find their place within the larger mystery of existence that exceeds our complete understanding. Thomas's vision of human fulfillment reaches beyond the boundaries of earthly life into questions that have stirred the human heart since consciousness first gazed upon the stars. What happens when we die? Is there meaning that transcends the brief span of our mortal existence? Can finite beings ever truly find rest in infinite mystery? For Thomas, these were not idle speculations, but urgent questions that flow directly from his understanding of human nature. If we are indeed rational beings, naturally oriented toward unlimited truth and goodness, then our deepest longings cannot be satisfied by anything finite or temporary. The very structure of human desire points beyond the boundaries of earthly existence toward a fulfillment that exceeds what any created good can provide. The peculiar nature of human knowledge reveals something profound about human destiny. Unlike animals, whose knowing seems perfectly adapted to their immediate survival needs, human beings can contemplate questions that have no practical bearing on their daily lives. We wonder about the age of the universe, the nature of consciousness, the possibility of life on distant worlds. We can spend hours lost in mathematical theorems or poetic images that serve no obvious biological purpose. This capacity for seemingly useless knowledge, Thomas suggests, reveals something profound about human destiny. We are not merely complex animals whose consciousness happens to evolve beyond practical necessity. We are beings whose minds are naturally proportioned to reality as such, to being itself in all its fullness. This suggests that our ultimate fulfillment lies not in mastering our environment or even in achieving perfect earthly happiness, but in the direct contemplation of ultimate reality. But here Thomas encounters a beautiful paradox. The more clearly reason demonstrates that human beings are made for perfect knowledge of truth, the more obvious it becomes that such knowledge cannot be achieved through natural human powers alone. We can prove that God exists, but we cannot see God's essence directly. We can understand that perfect goodness exists, but we cannot experience it fully through our own efforts. This creates what Thomas saw as a natural longing for something that nature alone cannot provide. It is as if we are beings naturally oriented toward a supernatural destiny, creatures whose deepest fulfillment requires a gift that exceeds the capacities of created nature. This gift, Thomas believed, is the vision of God face to face, the direct intellectual apprehension of divine essence that constitutes perfect blessedness. The doctrine of the resurrection of the body follows naturally from Thomas's understanding of human nature. If we are essentially embodied souls, rather than souls temporarily trapped in bodies, then our ultimate fulfillment must involve the restoration of our complete nature. The separated soul that survives death is not the whole human person, but only a part, however important, of what we truly are. This understanding brings a gentle dignity to our present embodied existence. Our bodies are not merely temporary vessels, but integral parts of our identity that will be restored and perfected in the resurrection. The physical world is not a realm to be escaped, but the proper sphere of embodied spiritual beings who find God not by fleeing creation, but by discovering the divine presence within and through the material order. As you settle deeper into rest tonight, consider the remarkable trajectory Thomas traces from the simplest observations about change and existence to the most sublime mysteries of human destiny. The same rational powers that enable you to understand mathematical relationships or navigate daily practical decisions also point you toward questions that stretch beyond the horizons of earthly life. The gentle fatigue that draws you towards sleep participates in the rhythm of embodied existence that Thomas saw as fundamentally good rather than regrettable. Your need for rest does not diminish your dignity as a rational being, but expresses the beautiful limitations that make you a creature rather than the creator. In accepting these limitations gracefully, you participate in the fundamental stance of receptivity that Thomas saw as the doorway to ultimate fulfillment. Perhaps no aspect of Thomas's thought has proven more enduringly influential than his understanding of the relationship between reason and faith. In an age when these two sources of truth are often seen as opposed, Thomas offers a vision of their fundamental harmony that continues to illuminate minds across centuries and cultures. Thomas began with the conviction that truth cannot contradict truth. Since God is the source of both the natural order that reason investigates and the supernatural revelation that faith receives, these two paths to truth must ultimately converge rather than conflict. Apparent contradictions between reason and faith indicate either that our reasoning has gone astray or that we have misunderstood what revelation actually teaches. This principle liberated Thomas to pursue philosophical inquiry with complete intellectual honesty while maintaining a firm commitment to revealed truth. He could follow arguments wherever they led because he trusted that honest inquiry would never ultimately undermine authentic faith. Similarly, he could embrace the insights of pagan philosophers like Aristotle because he recognized that truth belongs to no single tradition but shines wherever minds honestly engage with reality. But Thomas was careful to maintain the distinction between what reason can discover and what faith receives as a gift. Reason can demonstrate that God exists, but it cannot reveal that God is Trinity. Reason can establish principles of natural law, but it cannot discover the full depth of divine mercy. Reason can prove the immortality of the soul, but it cannot unveil the mystery of resurrection. This creates what Thomas saw as a beautiful complementarity rather than a competitive relationship. Reason prepares the way for faith by establishing the credibility of belief and by clearing away intellectual obstacles to the acceptance of revealed truth. Faith, in turn, provides reason with new data to explore and with the confidence that reality is ultimately intelligible rather than absurd. The practical implications of this harmony between reason and faith extend into every area of human life. In pursuing scientific knowledge, we need not fear that discovery will undermine our deepest convictions about meaning and value. In exploring philosophical questions, we can follow arguments with intellectual courage while remaining open to insights that transcend what unaided reason can achieve. This vision encourages a particular kind of intellectual humility that Thomas exemplified throughout his career. He was confident in reason's power to attain truth, but equally aware of reason's limitations. He was committed to revealed truth, but equally committed to understanding that truth as clearly and precisely as possible rather than accepting it blindly. As you drift deeper into the gentle embrace of sleep, carry with you something of Thomas's quiet confidence that the universe makes sense even when its meaning exceeds our present comprehension. The same creative wisdom that sustains your existence through the mystery of sleep will guide you through tomorrow's challenges and opportunities. In resting trustfully within that larger mystery, you participate in the fundamental stance of receptivity that Thomas saw as the beginning of all genuine wisdom. The influence of Thomas Aquinas extends far beyond the medieval world in which he lived, reaching across centuries to shape minds and institutions in ways both obvious and subtle. His synthesis of reason and faith provided a foundation that would support the development of universities, guide the formation of legal systems, and inspire countless thinkers to pursue truth with both intellectual rigor and spiritual depth. In the centuries immediately following Thomas's death, his ideas faced resistance from various quarters. Some traditionalists worried that his embrace of Aristotelian philosophy introduced dangerous pagan elements into Christian thought. Others found his systematic approach too rigid or his conclusions insufficiently mystical. The Franciscans, in particular, often preferred the more Augustinian approach of thinkers like Bonaventure, which emphasized divine illumination over natural reason. But gradually, the power and coherence of Thomas's vision won recognition. By the 14th century, his works were being studied and commented upon throughout Europe. The Dominican order, of which Thomas was a member, became particularly associated with his approach. producing generations of scholars who refined and developed his insights while remaining faithful to his fundamental principles. The Protestant Reformation brought new challenges and opportunities for Thomistic thought. While many reformers rejected what they saw as excessive reliance on human reason in theological matters, others found in Thomas's careful distinctions between nature and grace resources for understanding the relationship between divine sovereignty and human responsibility. Even those who disagreed with his conclusions often had to grapple seriously with the precision of his arguments and the comprehensiveness of his system. The Catholic Counter-Reformation saw a renewed interest in Thomas as a reliable guide through theological controversies. The Council of Trent frequently drew upon his distinctions and formulations in its doctrinal decrees. Jesuit schools throughout Europe made his Summa Theologica a central text in their curriculum, ensuring that his influence would spread wherever Catholic education flourished. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Thomas's enduring influence lies in how his ideas transcended the particular religious and cultural context in which they originated. His insights about the relationship between the universal and particular, his understanding of natural law, his analysis of political authority, and his approach to practical reasoning proved applicable far beyond the bounds of medieval Christendom. Consider how his theory of natural law influenced the development of international law. When legal scholars sought principles that could govern relationships between different nations and cultures, they found in Thomas's understanding of natural law a foundation that did not depend on the particular customs or beliefs of any single society. The idea that rational beings can discern universal principles of justice through careful reflection on human nature provided a basis for legal systems that could claim validity across cultural boundaries. This influence extended into the political revolutions that shaped the modern world. When the American founders spoke of self-evident truths and unalienable rights, they drew upon a tradition of natural law thinking that traced back through centuries of development to Thomas's foundational insights. The idea that political authority derives its legitimacy from its service to the common good rather than from mere power or tradition owes much to his careful analysis of the nature and limits of government. Even in areas where later thinkers departed significantly from Thomas's conclusions, his methodology continued to influence how questions were approached. His insistence on careful definition of terms, systematic consideration of objections, and integration of insights from multiple sources became standard features of serious intellectual inquiry. The structure of university education, with its emphasis on disputation and synthesis, reflects patterns of thought that Thomas helped establish. The 19th and 20th centuries saw renewed interest in Thomas's philosophy as thinkers sought alternatives to what they perceived as the limitations of purely secular approaches to knowledge and ethics. The neo-Thomistic movement, led by figures like Jacques Maritain and Étienne Gilson, argued that Thomas's insights remained relevant to contemporary questions about science, democracy, and human rights. This revival was not merely nostalgic, but involved serious engagement with modern developments in psychology, physics, and social theory. Neo-Thomists demonstrated how Thomas's fundamental principles could be applied to questions he never explicitly considered, showing the continuing fertility of his approach, rather than simply defending his particular conclusions. As you rest tonight, consider how the ideas flowing through your mind participate in conversations that stretch across centuries. The concepts you use to understand yourself and your world, the moral intuitions that guide your choices, and the very structure of rational inquiry that enables you to make sense of experience, all of these bear the influence of thinkers like Thomas, who devoted their lives to understanding the deepest patterns of reality. This is not to suggest that we must accept all of Thomas's conclusions, or that his system requires no development or correction. But it does invite recognition that serious thinking about fundamental questions builds upon the work of previous generations rather than starting from scratch. The insights achieved by one brilliant mind become available to countless others, creating a kind of intellectual inheritance that enriches human understanding across time and culture. The practical applications of Thomistic principles continue to evolve in response to new circumstances and challenges. Contemporary discussions of medical ethics, environmental responsibility, economic justice, and international relations all draw upon resources that can be traced back to Thomas's foundational work on natural law, virtue, and the common good. His understanding of the human person as a unity of soul and body provides guidance for navigating questions about artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and the enhancement of human capabilities. His insights about the relationship between individual dignity and social responsibility offer frameworks for thinking about the proper scope of government intervention and the obligations of citizenship in complex modern contexts. Most importantly, Thomas's vision of the harmony between reason and faith continues to offer hope for those who refuse to accept that intellectual honesty and spiritual depth must be opposed. In an age often characterized by polarization between scientific materialism and religious fundamentalism, his example suggests the possibility of approaches that honor both the power of rational inquiry and the reality of transcendent mystery. The gentle confidence that pervades Thomas's work flows from his conviction that reality itself is intelligible, that the universe makes sense even when our finite minds cannot grasp its full meaning. This confidence enables patient inquiry rather than anxious defensiveness, generous dialogue rather than hostile debate, and humble wonder rather than presumptuous certainty. As sleep begins to claim your consciousness, allow yourself to rest within this larger tradition of seeking truth. The questions that occupy your mind during quiet moments are not yours alone, but participate in humanity's ongoing conversation about meaning, purpose, and ultimate reality. In joining that conversation, however modestly, you contribute to the great work of understanding that connects each generation to those who came before and those who will come after. The synthesis that Thomas achieved between the wisdom of antiquity and the insights of revelation suggests that truth is large enough to embrace apparent contradictions and patient enough to wait for minds capable of receiving it. His legacy invites us not to choose between reason and faith, philosophy and theology, natural knowledge and revealed truth, but to seek the deeper unity that encompasses and transcends all partial perspectives. In the rhythm of your breathing as you settle towards sleep, in the gradual release of waking consciousness into the mystery of dreams, you participate in patterns that Thomas would recognize as expressions of the same creative wisdom that orders the movements of stars and the cycles of seasons. The particular and the universal, the material and the spiritual, the temporal and the eternal, all find their proper relationship within a vision large enough to hold both human dignity and cosmic mystery. Thomas's approach to the great questions of human existence offers not final answers, but reliable methods for continuing the search. His confidence in reason's power to approach truth is balanced by humility about reason's limitations. His commitment to revealed truth is matched by openness to insights that may come from unexpected sources. His systematic precision serves not rigid dogmatism, but the patient love of wisdom that seeks understanding rather than mere victory in argument. The medieval world in which Thomas lived and worked has passed away, but the fundamental questions he addressed remain as urgent as ever. What does it mean to be human? How should we live together? What is our ultimate destiny? Can finite minds ever touch infinite mystery? These questions arise naturally from the structure of human consciousness itself and cannot be dissolved by changes in technology or social organization. Thomas's contribution lies not in providing final answers, but in showing how such questions can be approached with both intellectual rigor and spiritual sensitivity. His methods remain available to anyone willing to engage seriously with the deepest puzzles of existence. His vision of the harmony between natural knowledge and revealed truth continues to inspire those who seek integration rather than fragmentation in their understanding of reality. As you drift deeper into the gentle embrace of sleep, carry with you something of Thomas's quiet confidence that the universe makes sense even when its meaning exceeds our present comprehension. The same creative wisdom that sustains your existence through the mystery of sleep will guide you through tomorrow's challenges and opportunities. In resting trustfully within that larger mystery, you participate in the fundamental stance of receptivity that Thomas saw as the beginning of all genuine wisdom. The great cathedral of thought that Thomas constructed continues to offer shelter for minds seeking truth and hearts seeking meaning. Its arches span the apparent gulf between reason and faith. Its foundations reach deep into the bedrock of human experience, and its spires point toward mysteries that exceed the grasp of any finite understanding. In entering that cathedral, even briefly, you join a communion of seekers that transcends the boundaries of time and culture. Tonight, as consciousness gradually fades into the deeper rhythms of sleep, let yourself rest within the larger rhythm of inquiry and wonder that connects all sincere seekers of truth. The questions Thomas explored with such patient care continue to invite exploration. The synthesis he achieved between philosophical rigor and theological depth continues to suggest possibilities for integration in our own fragmented age. The gentle confidence that pervaded his work continues to offer encouragement for those who refuse to abandon either honest thinking or humble faith. In the end, Thomas Aquinas offers not a system to be memorized, but an approach to be practiced, not conclusions to be defended, but methods to be employed, not answers to eliminate questions, but ways of living fruitfully within the questions that define human existence. His greatest gift may be the demonstration that intellectual excellence and spiritual depth can work together rather than in opposition, that the love of wisdom and the love of God are not competing loyalties, but complementary expressions of the same fundamental orientation toward truth. As you settle into the peace of approaching sleep, surrounded by the quiet presence of ideas that have illuminated minds across centuries, remember that you too participate in the ongoing search for understanding that gives meaning to human consciousness. In your own small way, through your own honest questions and patient reflections, you continue the great conversation that Thomas joined so brilliantly and that continues wherever minds meet mystery with both courage and humility. The gentle rhythm of scholastic wisdom continues its work even as you rest, weaving together the insights of reason and the whispers of faith into patterns of understanding that can sustain both mind and heart through the complexities of human existence. In that rhythm, find your rest tonight, knowing that the search for truth continues, and that your own participation in that search, however modest, contributes to the great work of understanding that connects all seekers across time and eternity. The gentle cadence of Thomas's thought extends into the most intimate corners of human experience, touching the quiet moments when we examine our own hearts and consider our place in the vast universe. His understanding of conscience represents one of his most personally relevant contributions, offering guidance for souls wrestling with the ancient challenge of discerning right from wrong in the complexity of daily life. Thomas understood conscience not as an arbitrary voice whispering commands, but as the practical application of moral knowledge to particular circumstances. It is reason itself working to understand what should be done here and now, given our understanding of human nature and the moral order that flows from it. Conscience, in this sense, is not separate from rational thought, but represents reason engaged with the practical question of how to live well. This understanding brings both dignity and responsibility to moral decision-making. Your conscience is not merely a collection of inherited taboos or social conventions, but your rational nature working to discern authentic good in the concrete circumstances of your life. When you feel the gentle tug of moral obligation, when something within you recognizes that a particular action would be wrong, even if no one would know, you experience the natural operation of practical reason responding to the moral structure of reality. But Thomas was equally clear that conscience can err. Just as our theoretical reasoning can reach false conclusions through faulty premises or flawed logic, Our practical reasoning can lead us astray through ignorance, passion, or malformed habits of thought. This is why the formation of conscience requires not only good intentions, but patient education in moral truth and careful attention to the ways our desires and fears can cloud our judgment. The cultivation of a well-formed conscience becomes a lifelong project, requiring both intellectual development and spiritual growth. We must study the principles of moral reasoning, but we must also examine our own hearts with honest attention to the ways self-interest and emotion can distort our perception of moral truth. We need the input of wise counselors and the correction of moral communities. But ultimately, each person must take responsibility for the judgments of conscience that guide their choices. As you settle deeper into rest tonight, consider the moral choices that have shaped your recent days, not with harsh self-criticism, but with the gentle attention Thomas would encourage. Where did your conscience speak clearly, and where did you listen well to its guidance? Where did you act against your better judgment? And what might that teach you about the formation of your own moral sensibilities? The very capacity for moral reflection that enables such examination is itself, Thomas would remind us, a participation in divine wisdom. The natural law written in rational nature connects your personal struggles with moral decision to the eternal law that orders all creation toward authentic fulfillment. In following conscience faithfully, you align yourself with the deepest currents of cosmic purpose. Thomas's understanding of beauty reveals another dimension of his remarkably integrated vision of reality. Beauty for him was not merely subjective preference or cultural convention, but a genuine aspect of being itself that rational creatures are naturally equipped to recognize and appreciate. The experience of beauty represents a particular way that finite minds can participate in divine perfection. 3 conditions, Thomas observed, are required for something to be beautiful. First, it must have integrity or wholeness, a completeness that satisfies our natural desire for unity. Second, it must have proper proportion, a harmony among its parts that pleases rational perception. Third, it must have clarity or brightness, a quality that makes its form readily apprehensible to the mind. These criteria apply not only to artistic creations, but to natural objects, moral actions, and intellectual insights. A mathematical theorem can be beautiful when it demonstrates elegant relationships among seemingly diverse phenomena. A moral choice can be beautiful when it expresses perfect harmony between reason and will. Even a person can be beautiful, not merely in physical appearance, but in the integration of their various powers and qualities. The capacity to recognize beauty, Thomas suggested, indicates something profound about human nature. Unlike purely practical evaluation, which asks whether something is useful for our purposes, aesthetic appreciation seeks no advantage beyond the simple joy of contemplating what is intrinsically worthy of admiration. This suggests that human beings are not merely problem-solving creatures, but beings capable of finding fulfillment in the pure appreciation of goodness and truth. Beauty also serves as a bridge between sensible and intelligible reality. Through our eyes we see colours and shapes, through our ears we hear sounds and rhythms, but through our minds we apprehend the formal relationships that make sensible objects beautiful. In aesthetic experience, matter and spirit, sense and intellect work together to create a unified response that engages our entire being. As you settle into rest tonight, allow your awareness to touch gently on the beautiful things you encountered during the day. Perhaps the play of light through a window, the sound of laughter, the graceful movement of a bird, the kindness in someone's eyes. Thomas would encourage you to receive these experiences not merely as pleasant sensations, but as invitations to deeper appreciation of the beauty that structures reality at every level. The very rhythm of your breathing as you prepare for sleep participates in the kind of natural harmony that Thomas recognized as beautiful. The way consciousness gradually releases its grip on waking concerns, the gentle surrender to rest, the peaceful cycling between tension and relaxation, all express the kind of proportion and integrity that mark authentic beauty. Thomas's exploration of time and eternity addresses one of the most profound mysteries of human existence. Unlike many philosophers who saw time as illusion or imperfection, Thomas understood temporal existence as a genuine aspect of created reality that reflects divine wisdom in its own proper mode. For embodied, rational creatures, time is not a prison, but the natural medium within which growth, relationship, and authentic development can occur. Thomas distinguished carefully between time as experienced by material creatures and the eternal mode of existence that belongs to God alone. Eternity, in his understanding, is not simply endless time, but a completely different mode of existence in which past, present, and future are simultaneously present in a single perfect act of being. God does not experience temporal succession, but knows and loves all of creation in one eternal moment that encompasses all times, without being limited by any of them. This distinction helps address some of the puzzles that arise when we try to understand divine providence and human freedom. From our temporal perspective, we experience genuine choices and open possibilities. The future seems undetermined, and our decisions appear to make real differences in how events unfold. From the eternal perspective, all of history is simultaneously present to divine knowledge. But this does not eliminate human freedom any more than your present knowledge of past events eliminates the freedom with which those past choices were made. For creatures like ourselves, time provides the necessary framework within which authentic development can occur. We cannot become virtuous all at once, but must gradually form good habits through repeated choices. We cannot achieve deep relationships instantly, but must build trust and understanding through shared experiences over time. We cannot grasp complex truths immediately, but must approach them step by step through patient inquiry. This suggests that temporal existence, far from being a limitation we should seek to escape, represents the appropriate mode of life for rational creatures who are also material beings. The rhythm of time, with its cycles of work and rest, growth and maturation, learning and teaching, provides the natural structure within which human life can achieve its proper fulfillment. As you settle into sleep tonight, consider how the gentle progression of time has shaped your own growth and understanding. The person you are now represents the accumulation of countless moments of choice, experience, and reflection, stretching back to your earliest memories. Tomorrow will bring new opportunities for development that cannot be rushed or forced, but must unfold according to their natural rhythm. The very process of falling asleep illustrates the gift of temporality. Consciousness does not simply switch off, but gradually fades through stages of decreasing awareness. Dreams may compress or extend temporal experience in strange ways, but they still unfold in sequence. Even in rest, you remain a temporal being participating in the natural rhythms that structure all embodied existence. Thomas's vision suggests that this temporal dimension of your existence is not an accident or a limitation, but a reflection of divine wisdom that creates different kinds of beings for different kinds of perfection in the larger order of creation. In accepting your nature as a temporal creature, you participate appropriately in the order of creation while also preparing for the eternal fulfillment that awaits beyond time. The mystery of divine providence occupied much of Thomas's attention as he sought to understand how particular human lives fit within the vast scope of divine wisdom and love. Each person, he believed, is called to play a unique role in the unfolding of creation's return to God, a role that no one else can fulfill and that contributes irreplaceably to the common good of the whole. This vision begins with the recognition that every human person possesses inherent dignity that cannot be reduced to their usefulness for social purposes or their success in achieving external goals. Each person is loved by God for their own sake, called to their own authentic fulfillment, and destined for their own unique participation in divine life. This dignity belongs equally to all human beings, regardless of their circumstances, abilities, or achievements. But Thomas was equally clear that individual fulfillment cannot be separated from the good of the communities and relationships within which each person lives. Human beings are naturally social creatures who find their own good only in seeking the good of others and contributing to shared purposes larger than themselves. Personal fulfillment and social responsibility are not competing values, but complementary aspects of authentic human development. This creates what Thomas saw as a beautiful harmony between self-love and love of neighbour. When we truly understand our own nature and destiny, we recognize that we cannot achieve authentic fulfillment by pursuing our own interests in isolation from or opposition to others. Our deepest good includes the good of those around us, just as their deepest good includes our own flourishing. As you prepare for sleep tonight, consider how your own life participates in the mystery of divine providence. The circumstances that shaped your early development, the opportunities and challenges that have marked your journey, the relationships that have formed your character, all represent the intersection of divine wisdom with human freedom and natural causation in ways too complex for complete analysis. The simple act of seeking rest when you need it illustrates something of the collaboration between divine providence and human responsibility that Thomas described. Your need for sleep reflects the natural requirements of embodied existence, requirements that divine wisdom established as part of the created order. Your choice to honor these requirements represents appropriate cooperation with divine purposes while also taking responsibility for your own well-being. In the mysterious processes of rest and renewal that occur during sleep, divine providence continues its work through natural causes, restoring your energy, consolidating your memories, and preparing you for tomorrow's opportunities and challenges. This collaboration between grace and nature continues whether you are conscious of it or not, sustaining your existence and enabling your participation in purposes larger than your individual life. And so, dear listeners, as the gentle cathedral of Thomas's thoughts settles around you like evening mist, we reach the end of our journey through 8 centuries of wisdom, from his insights about existence and essence to his vision of divine providence, from his 5 proofs for God's existence to his understanding of human nature as embodied souls. We have traced the architecture of a mind that sought to weave together reason and faith into a seamless tapestry of understanding. Thomas Aquinas offers us something rare in our fragmented age, a demonstration that intellectual rigor and spiritual depth need not be enemies, but can work together as partners in the search for truth. His patient confidence that reality makes sense, even when its full meaning exceeds our grasp, provides a foundation upon which weary souls can rest. His integration of individual fulfillment and social responsibility suggests ways of living that honor both personal authenticity and the common good. Tonight, as consciousness fades into the deeper rhythms that sustain all existence, carry with you Thomas's gentle assurance that you are not an accident, but a cherished participant in a cosmic story older than mountains and more enduring than stars. The same creative wisdom that formed you from stardust and breathed rational life into matter continues its patient work even as you sleep, preparing tomorrow's opportunities for growth in understanding, virtue, and love. Before you drift away completely, I want to ask you, how do you balance intellectual knowledge with spiritual experience in your own life? Thomas Aquinas taught us that both are paths to truth, and I would genuinely love to hear your reflections in the comments below. And if this journey through the mind of the Angelic Doctor brought you peace tonight, please consider subscribing to Scion for more restful explorations of philosophy and theology. There are many more brilliant minds waiting to share their wisdom with you in the quiet hours of evening. Rest well, knowing that the great conversation about life's deepest questions continues, and that your own quiet reflections, however modest, add something irreplaceable to humanity's ongoing search for meaning. In the rhythm of your breathing, in the gradual release of today's concerns, you participate in the fundamental trust that Thomas saw as the doorway to all genuine wisdom. Sweet dreams, fellow travellers in the Cathedral of Thought. May the gentle wisdom of Thomas Aquinas carry you peacefully through the night, and may you awaken tomorrow with renewed wonder at the gift of existence itself. Good night.